Everybody, today we're going to be talking about consistency of geology and why that's important. We're going to use rock strata to demonstrate what I'm talking about. We talked a little bit about this in the tree video, but we're going to go into a lot more detail here. So we're going to start off with what it looks like when you don't have consistency, how I learned that consistency was important, and what the end game can do to the linear feel and the depth of your layout. We're going to start off here on the first work that I did on what I consider to be the modern version of the layout. So this is about 2014. It's when I first started using static grass. Now, when I was building the hill up here, I know I wanted a tunnel here, and I know I wanted retaining walls here. So I simply went about throwing in a tunnel and slapping on some rock work. I used this rock here to separate the two retaining walls, just to give it a little bit more interest, but I didn't think about what was going to happen above there. And you can see that continues over here. We got rock work here, and it's kind of just lumped on here, and then rock work up here. But it's very vertical, and then this is on an angle. So it doesn't make a whole lot of geologic sense to me. This was rushed. I threw this in here without any thought as to how or why nature would have created this shoulder of rock. Now I was working my way from tunnel 3 down towards tunnel 2, downgrade, and the bulb above my head started to get a little bit of amperage there. Now I'm going to say it was probably only 5 watts at this point in time, but things were starting to brighten up. This lump of rock here didn't make any sense to me, so I threw some rock above it to kind of get that continuation through here. However, I didn't do a good job because it's all offset here, and it doesn't make any sense from a geologic perspective. So as I started working my way down the hill a little bit more, I started to incorporate more angular rock formations into the scene here. I still hadn't got it quite figured out yet. This is the continuation of rock through here, but this face on the back side here doesn't correspond with any faces going this way. And this is supposed to represent a cut, but it's far too far back to actually do that effectively. Below the track though, you can see that things are starting to look a little bit better because I'm starting to get that striated look to things. And as I continued down past tunnel 2 downgrade, I started to really emphasize that striated kind of shelf look of the rock. Multiple rock faces here. This is by no means done because I'm not super happy with it, but this is where the light bulb was really starting to brighten up. We're probably up to about 40 watts at this point in time. You can see that the multiple rock faces are much more effective than a single rock face because it kind of shuffles your eyeball down through the scene. I also started to incorporate rock faces and rock, I guess the plane of the rock right through the track like this. So this is where this started to come together, where I thought that foreground and background should be combined with the geology, so it looked like the track was going through the scene versus the scene being built around the track. Now I took a hiatus from the hobby for about 5 years before I came back to this area here, and the lessons learned really started to show up here. We've talked about this briefly before in the tree video, how this rock is all oriented in a specific way so it makes the eyeball go this way. That's important, but it's not just making the eye follow uphill here. It depends on how your rock is oriented towards your backdrop, which will extend the scene or make the scene look deeper. So one thing that I like to do, and this is why I do it, is all my rock tends to be somewhat angled here, okay? And the reason for that is because you're going to get more scenery in if you're going across your benchwork versus this way. You're going to lengthen the scene by going this way. And we're talking rock here, but that applies to anything. It applies to the trees. We talked about that in the tree video. It applies to hills. It applies to rivers. It applies to anything. If you can go across your backdrop with your geologic features, across your benchwork with your geologic features, it's going to not only extend the length of the layout, it's going to extend the depth of the layout. Now, something else we touched on briefly was how the slope of the rock affects the grade, or how you perceive the grade of the track. Now, right here, we're going from about 0.5% and slowly transitioning to about 1.85% right here. Now, if you look at the way this rock is sloped, take note as to how it makes this grade look. It doesn't look like it's that steep. But if we go to the other side of the layout, to the area called Drawbar Alley, the rocks slope the opposite direction and they make the grade look much steeper. It's still 1.85% here, but because we've got the landscape tipped the opposite direction, it's really emphasizing that grade. Now, when we talk about the consistency of geology, because this is a peninsula, these rocks slope the same way as the rocks on the other side. So this represents the horn of a mountain, or the horn where the tracks are actually coming around and following the end of a mountain side, or the shoulder of a mountain upgrade. Now the best way to show you the consistency I'm going for here is to go for a little walk. So you can see in the corner we've got our rocks taken off on that angle, okay? And as we come back down to the bottom of Drawbar Alley, again, we're following this angle up towards the backdrop. Here, we've got a rock outcropping following that same general angle, but if you look upgrade, that slope is all consistent, okay? And as we come around to the end at 46.15, we fixed this. You remember that in the restoration series. Again, we're picking up that same basic general angle in relation to the basement floor. It kind of goes into a Z here, or Z for you American fellas. Here, and back out, and it's going off on that direction again. In relation to the basement floor, the angle really doesn't change. And looking down towards 45.2 and tunnel 5, again, that same general angle, and our slope is this way, okay? So it does represent the end of a mountain. Now the rock has been folded like this on this mountain, but we're portraying that because we're following that same general principle of rocks coming out this way and the same general slope, showing that this is a tectonic movement. Now, one thing about the consistency of geology is that we're not covering vast distances on our layouts, so things aren't going to change a whole lot. You can see that here. Now, this rock face, because of the direction of travel of the terrain, has nothing to do with the one over between 45.2 and 46.15, but I follow the same principle. This is angling across here at 45 degrees. We're picking up a rock face here. This is a cut, and the rock goes up here. Again, we've got a rock face here, here. It kind of wiggles around and then takes off again like this. And above tunnel 5, we've got that same general shape, slope, and direction of orientation as opposed to the backdrop. So everything here follows the same general direction in relation to this specific scene. Color is the last thing that is important when you're talking geology. Color's not going to change drastically in a short period of time, so I use the same colors on all my rocks. Oddly enough, those same colors, and you guys remember, it's Mars black and raw sienna on the rocks. That goes into everything else on the layout too, including backdrop. You'll find Mars black and raw sienna in everything. So geologic consistency. Here's the rules that I live by real quickly. I place multiple rock faces on the layout because I find multiple rock faces are more interesting than a single rock face. They act as a stepping stone and they guide your eye down the layout. My rock faces tend to always be angled across the layout, usually 30 to 45 degrees. The more angle in comparison to the front of the layout, or in relation to the front of the layout, the longer the scene's going to look. The longer the scene looks and the longer the rock face, it also adds to the depth of the scene. The slope of my rock tends to always be consistent. And the reason for that is I want to emulate that tilted up bedrock. My rocks travel across the track. They're not on one side or the other. They tend to travel right across the track, so it looks like the track went through the scenery. The rocks weren't placed after the track went down. And of course, I tie everything together with color. Keep it simple. Pick 2 good colors to use on your rocks, and tie that in with the rest of your scenery. After all the soil on the layout came from that rock structure to begin with. So there you go, guys. That's the rules that I live by. That's why I do the things that I do when it comes to rock work and trying to keep things geologically accurate. Big project in the works here. Haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do. I'm either going to hack off a chunk of the layout below the Burmese crossovers and fix a lighting issue I've had for a number of years, or I'm going to do scenery along Island Lake between Highway 3 and Summit Lime. Either way, new series coming up. Hopefully get a start on that in the next little bit here. Big train show coming up in April. I'd like to get a little bit done before that kicks off, so I got something to show off. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. As always, really appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next video.